London began not as legend, but as mud, thick riverbank mud swallowing merchant boots. A grey city of timber stalls and narrow lanes, huddled beside a restless river. Long before empires marched or markets roared, London listened to water for wisdom. Because every great city begins with a single question. Asterisk, who controls the flow? Asterisk, the Romans answered that question first. Planting walls where the Thames bent obediently, they built roads like arteries, linking the island's heartbeat to continental ambition. Coins replaced barter, order replaced chaos, and London discovered the seduction of scale. Not through conquest, but through counting. But empires vanish, instincts remain. When Rome fell, the city shivered, yet refused to sink beneath the river's tide. Merchants arrived like migrating birds. Drawn by rumors of opportunity wrapped in fog, London learned survival not through strength, but through stubbornness. By the Middle Ages, trade shaped the skyline more than churches ever could. Flemish weavers, Italian bankers, Hanseatic traders, all chasing profit through London's crooked streets. The city became a melting pot of accents, currencies, loyalties, and quiet nighttime calculations. Even then, London understood the oldest rule of commerce: proximity is power. The guilds rose next, councils of craftsmen who regulated labor like miniature monarchs. Their halls echoed with negotiations that shaped the city's destiny far beyond craftsmanship. For guilds didn't just make goods, they made order, reputation, and reliable arithmetic. They gave London its first taste of organized capitalism. Yet beneath their structure burned unpredictable forces. Markets swelled with ambition, alleys swelled with disease. The Thames carried wealth and waste alike. London lived on the edge of brilliance and breakdown, breathing risk with every transaction. It was a child's city playing with adult arithmetic. Then came the plagues, waves of death rolling through crooked lanes like silent punishment. Half the population vanished. Trade slowed, markets gasped for oxygen, silence replaced commerce. But London's secret was stubbornness, the economic instinct to survive loss by reinvention. And in the ashes of despair, ambition returned fiercer than before. The fire of 1666 tested that ambition again, swallowing 40,000 homes in orange hunger. Flames turned markets to soot and vaults to vapor, devouring centuries of confidence. Yet within days, merchants met beside smoldering ruins, negotiating futures over ruined scent. Because London did not rebuild, it reimagined. From the ashes rose a new city of stone, geometry, and commercial intent. Wide streets to move goods faster, stronger buildings to store wealth safer, clearer laws to protect profit. The fire destroyed London's past, but carved foundations for its financial future. Every catastrophe became opportunity measured in ledger lines, and within this reborn city stood a modest coffee house that would alter the world. Lloyd's Coffee House, a bustling den of sailors, brokers, gamblers, and genius in equal measure. Its wooden tables became markets, its conversations became contracts, its walls became a global nerve. Here, London discovered its true calling, measuring risk before others could. Insurance was born in those crowded rooms, written on parchment stained with coffee and ambition. Ships sailed to continents unknown, yet their risks returned home as predictable numbers. London had found the magic formula: profit from uncertainty without leaving the room. Empire began extending across oceans, through ink instead of steel, across the street. Another revolution brewed quietly beneath the domes of St. Paul's. The goldsmiths of Cheapside began storing wealth and issuing receipts to restless merchants. Those receipts, small slips of trust, evolved into banknotes, promises made portable. Trust became transferable, and transferable trust became the new architecture of empire. London didn't conquer land, it conquered belief. A city that once traded wool now traded perception. The idea of value. Every handshake in a coffee house, every receipt in a ledger, every gamble on weather-worn ships, all sculpted London into a marketplace of minds, not materials. By the early 18th century, the Bank of England emerged as London's quiet monarch. Its stone walls guarded national faith more fiercely than any throne ever could. The bank printed promises the empire would later enforce, making money a map of ambition. And once Britain mastered money, the world began to orbit London's arithmetic. Merchants became magnates, sailors became shareholders. Risk became ritual in candlelit counting rooms. Insurance covered loss, credit covered distance, and trade covered time. No city had ever monetized motion the way London did, profit from ships unseen for years. The Thames became an artery pumping speculation across continents. But London's genius was not only economic, it was psychological. It learned to make strangers trust each other, using nothing but paper and persuasion. Contracts became chains, promises became pillars, and accounting became art. By selling belief, London built a cathedral invisible to the eye, unavoidable to the world. Then the empire expanded, not through conquest, but calculation. India, Africa, the Caribbean, the Pacific, territories mapped by merchants before ministers. London financed voyages, wars, revolutions, and industries, pulling profit from every parallel. It became the metropole of ambition, the city that prized the planet. Yet London never bragged, it simply accumulated. It let others celebrate glory while it counted quietly in polished boardrooms. A city of fog learned to make opacity profitable. Mystery became its most valuable export. Even sunlight struggled to reveal the true depth of London's ledgers. Through centuries of crisis, the city refined its rhythm. Wars shook governments, but markets opened each morning with unwavering punctuality. Pandemics halted parliaments, yet brokers still scribbled numbers by candlelight. London's heartbeat was not political, it was financial. The Industrial Revolution accelerated that heartbeat until it pulsed with global velocity. Factories roared like iron beasts, steamships sliced oceans with mechanical certainty. Goods flooded London's docks, and money flooded London's markets in synchronized frenzy. The city became the metronome of modernity, timing the world through trade. Railways connected distant towns to London's appetite, turning local economies into imperial extensions. Insurance covered accidents, bonds financed bridges, and credit built cities not yet dreamt. London profited from possibilities, risks, and futures, realities optional, optimism essential. It had mastered the mathematics of expansion. By the mid-19th century, London carried more global deposits than any city in history. Its banks financed monarchs, revolutions, railroads, and entire wars with polished confidence. The city had become the world's creditor, debtor, dealer, insurer, and silent influencer. Its balance sheets were longer than its boulevards. And yet, London's true dominance was subtle. It never demanded loyalty, it priced it. It never forced dependency, it offered convenience. It never claimed supremacy, it quietly became indispensable. The Victorian era crowned London as the planet's financial throne, polished by steam and speculation. Its skyline swelled with spires, domes, and counting houses, architecture designed to impress confidence. Merchant princes replaced aristocrats. Clerks replaced cavalry, ledgers replaced lances. London was no longer a city. It was a system. Even culture bowed to commerce. Novels romanticized wealth. Newspapers chronicled fortunes. Theatre whispered London's global role. The city's identity fused with money until the two became indistinguishable. To speak of London was to speak of capital. As the 19th century closed, London stood untouchable, the world's largest port, the world's richest marketplace, the world's financial nucleus. Every currency nodded to sterling. Every economy relied on London's quiet arithmetic. It was the city that sold the world, piece by piece, policy by policy, promise by promise. But beneath the radiance, a question stirred. Could any city hold such power without eventually drowning in its own importance. London did not answer. It simply turned the page and continued counting. Because a city built on capital always believes collapse is temporary. The 20th century waited patiently with its storms, and London, still magnificent and unaware, walked calmly into the century that would test every inch of its confidence. For the city that sold the world was about to discover the cost of its own creation. London entered the 20th century carrying confidence it had polished across generations of certainty. It believed its markets unbreakable, its banks unshakable, its influence immune to the frictions of fate. For a city that had survived plagues, fires, wars, and revolutions, decline felt statistically impossible. But history does not measure pride, only pressure. The First World War arrived like a shadow, falling across every ledger in the city. London had always financed conflict, but now it was financing survival itself. Gold flowed out faster than conviction flowed in, loans multiplied faster than victories. For the first time in centuries, London's wealth felt finite. Still, the city adapted with familiar composure. It shifted from funding empire to funding allies, turning war into international partnership. But partnerships carry profit only until confidence collapses, and confidence wavered with every casualty. The pound trembled lightly, yet London refused to acknowledge the tremor. In the aftermath, the empire staggered forward, magnificent yet mortgaged. London proclaimed resilience, though inflation whispered otherwise beneath every polished numerical report. The city had always believed it controlled risk, but the war revealed risk controlled everything. Even the most disciplined market cannot price human devastation accurately. Then came the Roaring Twenties, a decade painted in champagne bubbles and borrowed optimism. Markets soared, cities danced, industries accelerated. London regained its familiar, energetic swagger. But beneath the glamour sat fragile arithmetic, loans supporting illusions supporting lifestyles. A skyscraper of promises, built on scaffolds of speculation. When the crash hit in 1929, its echo shook the Thames like a cannon. Bankers stared at empty numbers, traders stared at vanished fortunes. Governments stared at spreading panic. London saw the truth first. Faith collapses faster than fortunes, and far more violently. The city that priced the world had mispriced itself. The Great Depression turned counting houses into confession chambers. Every economy connected to London felt the stink, because London had taught them the system. Trust contracted, capital retreated, and global commerce froze like a winter river. The financial metropolis discovered its influence could wound as easily as it once enriched. Yet London did not fall. It rebalanced. It recalibrated the empire through austerity, adjustment, and uncomfortable acceptance of economic humility. The city learned that supremacy without stability becomes self-inflicted sabotage in slow motion. To lead markets again, London needed to rebuild mathematics from the ground upward. But recovery remained fragile, and fragility is the enemy of empires. Europe simmered with tension, dictatorships rose with rhetoric. Diplomacy weakened under weight of grievance. Once again, London found itself funding a world preparing for catastrophe. War approached not as surprise, but as unpaid debt from the previous disaster. The Second World War struck harder, deeper, and more ruthlessly than any crisis before. Bombs redrew London's skyline, sirens replaced bells. Survival replaced ambition in every household. The city that once financed empires now fought desperately to finance its own hindrance. Credit became lifeline, gold became memory, resilience became currency. Yet even under attack, London's financial instincts persisted. Markets reopened the morning after bombings. Clerks wrote ledgers near shattered windows. The city measured destruction not in ruins, but in deferred opportunities. Commerce waited patiently for the smoke to clear. When the war finally ended, London emerged victorious, but profoundly altered. Its prestige remained, but its supremacy had quietly migrated westward across the Atlantic. The United States now possessed deeper reserves, larger industries, and a currency infused with optimism. New York was rising, and London could feel the shift. But London had something America lacked: centuries of financial infrastructure woven into global veins. Even wounded, the city remained indispensable, a hub to entrench to replace overnight. It reinvented itself through subtlety, networking, cooperation, and the soft power of experience. London survived because it understood that influence adapts faster than institutions. The post-war world needed systems, and London specialized in systems. Insurance for reconstruction, loans for development, brokers for global trade, contracts for stabilizing currencies. The city transformed chaos into commerce with familiar precision, elegant, resilient, quietly persuasive. This was London's genius, turning recovery into opportunity without appearing opportunistic. But a new challenger emerged: Europe itself, reorganizing and rising from ruin. Continental nations rebuilt industries with modern efficiency, threatening Britain's older machinery. London responded by deepening its financial architecture, strengthening the city's regulatory sophistication. If it could not outproduce its rivals, it would outfinance them instead. Then came the end of empire. Colonies declared independence, maps lost their red borders, and Britain lost its imperial revenue streams. But London adapted with elegant ruthlessness, transforming empire from territory to transaction. Former colonies became clients, old dependencies became financial partnerships. This shift created the eurodollar market, a revolution disguised as accounting. Dollars held outside America escaped regulation, flowing freely through London's hands. The city became a global sanctuary for capital seeking anonymity, speed, and strategic advantage. Suddenly, London controlled money it never printed. Banks multiplied like stars, each one promising faster transfers, quieter channels, broader networks. Foreign firms arrived in droves, drawn to London's unique blend of freedom and stability. Regulation remained light, ambition remained heavy, innovation remained relentless. The city evolved into the world's unofficial financial republic. The 1970s demanded even greater reinvention. Inflation spiked, strikes erupted, political confidence cracked beneath economic strain. But London's markets continued ticking, each crisis treated as recalibration rather than collapse. The city learned endurance is the rarest financial asset of all. By the early 1980s, a new philosophy swept through Westminster and the city alike. Deregulation, competition, privatization, momentum, a gospel preached in modern suits and bold ambitions. Margaret Thatcher reshaped the nation's financial architecture with steel will and strategic precision. The city was liberated, accelerated, and unleashed. Then came the Big Bang of 1986, a digital detonation heard across the world. Trading floors transformed into electronic ecosystems. Deals traveled faster than thought itself. Old boys clubs gave way to global corporations armed with algorithms and ambition. London became a financial supercomputer wearing a Victorian mask. The city's architecture changed overnight. Skyscrapers pierced the clouds. Glass replaced stone, terminals replaced telegrams. The city grew louder, brighter, faster, a storm of screens and endless speculation. Profit became lightning, striking wherever opportunity flickered. Global banks established headquarters in London, turning the city into Wall Street's sophisticated twin. Chinese firms, Middle Eastern funds, American giants, all converged on London's irresistible marketplace. Every time zone touched London, every currency respected London. Every crisis consulted London. This was no longer empire, it was orbit. Yet beneath the glamour brewed new complexity. Unregulated markets created shadows as deep as profits, spaces where risk multiplied quietly. London's freedom attracted both visionaries and villains, innovators and opportunists. The city became a magnet for money, legitimate and otherwise. Still, confidence in London remained unshaken, because while other cities specialized in scale, London specialized in nuance. It knew how to manage uncertainty better than any rival had ever learned. Centuries of crisis had become its curriculum. As the 20th century closed, London stood reborn, transformed, electrified. It had survived world wars, depressions, decolonization, and industrial decline. Yet it emerged not weaker, but wiser, a financial phoenix with perfect institutional memory. The capital of capital had reasserted its throne. But the new millennium waited with new storms, digital revolutions, financial collapses, geopolitical shifts, and challenges no spreadsheet could fully contain. London prepared as it always had, calmly, strategically, and with unshakable self-belief. For a city built on capital never fears the unknown, it prices it. London entered the new millennium with a confidence sharpened by centuries of survival. Its skyline glimmered like a constellation of ambition, each tower a monument to financial endurance. The city had become more than infrastructure. It was a global organism breathing money as oxygen, and the world, willingly or not, inhaled London's rhythm. Technology accelerated everything the city already excelled at. Digital markets replaced mechanical ones. Algorithms replaced brokers. Data replaced instinct. Trades that once took minutes now vanished and reappeared in microseconds across invisible circuits. The city evolved into a shimmering fusion of electricity, ambition, and controlled chaos. Yet beneath the modern veneer lived ancient instincts. Risk remained ritual. Calculation remained scripture. Confidence remained the currency above all others. London had survived plagues, fires, and empires. It would certainly survive software. The city trusted its past more than any prediction. Offshore finance blossomed beside this digital bloom. The old imperial network, islands, ports, dependencies, transformed into quiet tax havens. Jersey, Guernsey, the Caymans, the British Virgin Islands, leftovers of empire repurposed for capital. London stood at the centre, a conductor coordinating invisible symphonies of global wealth. Money travelled through these jurisdictions like whispers through cathedral halls, hidden, refined, redirected, anonymized. Capital learned to move without fingerprints. London didn't hide the world's fortunes. It simply offered places for fortunes to rest discreetly. The empire had gone offshore, but never offline. Corporations and oligarchs, monarchs and magnates, innovators and opportunists, all fed this network. To them, London represented neutrality, elegance, sophistication, and silence when necessary. The city wore a suit, but its influence wore no face at all. It had become the world's most polite and powerful ghost. By the mid-2000s, London's dominance felt effortless. Foreign money flooded real estate. Luxury towers rose like metallic prayers above the Thames. The city glowed with investment from every continent, legal, questionable, and everything between. It was easy to mistake momentum for immortality. But the storm arrived in 2008. Banks collapsed. Trust evaporated. Markets convulsed under the weight of their own bravado. The financial system shook violently, revealing how fragile its certainties had always been. London, epicenter of global finance, faced its most intimate reckoning. Yet even amid chaos, the city remained eerily calm. Traders worked through the night. Policymakers spoke softly. The Bank of England exhaled controlled precision. London had no illusions about crisis. It had rehearsed catastrophe for centuries, and its greatest strength was not wealth, but composure. Quantitative easing became the new ritual, printing confidence rather than gold. Interest rates fell towards zero, cushioning collapse with invisible financial scaffolding. Economists debated morality, markets ignored metaphysics, and accepted survival gratefully. London stabilized itself by stabilizing everyone else. Recovery arrived unevenly, uncertainly, but undeniably. New regulations reshaped banking. New technologies reshaped trading. New fears reshaped the city's identity. London emerged humbled yet hardened, older yet somehow lighter, a seasoned captain in turbulent waters. It understood better than any city the price of global interdependence. But power never vanishes, it migrates. China rose. America recalibrated. Europe reorganized. Digital currencies challenged tradition. London did not resist change. It absorbed it, adopting innovation with measured elegance. The city remained flexible where other financial capitals remained ideological. Fintech firms settled in Shoreditch. Cryptocurrency hubs emerged beside Victorian warehouses. Silicon dreams mingled with centuries-old institutions governing the world's monetary bloodstream. London began engineering a future where algorithms negotiated directly with one another. It was capitalism without handwriting, commerce without a human pulse. Yet London retained its humanity in strange, subtle ways. Brokers still gathered in pubs, clerks still crossed London Bridge at dawn. The rhythm of the city, ancient, stubborn, familiar, survived the digital invasion, because London was more than technology or trade. It was temperament. Then came Brexit, a rupture of identity as much as policy. The city that sold the world found itself questioned by the nation it enriched. Uncertainty rattled markets. Headlines screamed. Currencies staggered under political turbulence. The pound fell, but London's pasture held firm. Companies relocated some offices, but not their loyalties. Investors paused, but did not retreat, because no treaty, vote, or border could erase centuries of financial gravity. London remained the place where money felt understood. The city adapted, negotiating new partnerships with old clients and emerging markets. Its strength had never been geography. It had always been concentration of expertise. Even stripped of European membership, London retained symbolic supremacy. It continued selling the world what every economy needed: confidence. And in the modern age, confidence is priceless. Not data, not currency, not commodities, belief. The belief that markets move, systems hold, and civilization remains predictable tomorrow. London specialized in manufacturing that belief with graceful consistency. As the 2020s unfolded, new storms gathered: pandemics, inflation, supply chain shocks, geopolitical fractures. Cities crack beneath such pressure. Empires crumble, currencies falter, institutions disintegrate. But London endured with its characteristic equilibrium, balancing fear and optimism on brass scales. Its survival instinct had matured into something almost mythic. Remote trading surged, offices emptied, skyscrapers fell silent except for servers humming tirelessly. Yet the city refused irrelevance, reinventing itself again through hybrid work and digital ecosystems. Finance no longer required physical presence, only intellectual convergence and technological fluency. London offered both, effortlessly. Its offshore network strengthened as global tensions rose. Wealth sought safety in places where laws were clear, institutions ancient, and discretion absolute. The world's fortunes flowed through London's invisible corridors, trusting the city more than governments. The capital of capital remained capital to those who needed sanctuary. And still, London never declared supremacy. It allowed others to claim power while it processed their transactions quietly. The city's greatness was never theatrical. It was procedural, precise, refined through centuries. Influence expressed not through volume, but continuity. Today, London stands as paradox and proof. A medieval river port turned planetary financial brain, shaped by disaster as much as fortune. A city that lost its empire yet it gained the world's economy in return. A marketplace that became mythology. Its strength is not its skyline, but its memory. London remembers everything: the plagues, the fires, the crashes, the conquests, the corrections. Each crisis taught it calibration. Each recovery taught it restraint. This is why London still dictates the rhythm of global money. It is the city that sells the world not goods, but certainty. Not sovereignty, but systems. Not territory, but trust. And trust, once earned across centuries, becomes unshakable. London will continue evolving, absorbing shocks, adjusting structures, refining its quiet dominance. Other capitals may rise, but few understand the psychology of markets as intimately as London. Because London is not merely built on capital, it is built from capital. And capital, like rivers, flows toward places that understand its nature. The Thames moves beneath its bridges, as it always has, steady, indifferent, eternal. And above it, towers glitter with the reflections of decisions, shaping every currency on earth. London is still selling the world, still navigating storms, still orchestrating systems behind soft-spoken confidence, still proving that true power never announces itself, it accumulates. If this story changed how you see London's invisible power, remember, cities rise when belief aligns with ambition. Subscribe for more untold histories of how money, empire, and destiny intertwine. Because the world's next revolution won't begin with armies, it will begin with credit.